Hello everyone, Monty here from IG, here to talk about some additional items like withdrawal, funding, and overnight. Now, opening an account is free, and when it comes to deposits and withdrawals, well, first we got to log in, right? Got to go in, and first thing that's going to come up is the dashboard, and at the top left, you'll see dashboard, and then click on live accounts. And in the subtabs, you're going to see deposit funds and withdrawal funds, and ideally wherever it is that you're funding from should be where you should be withdrawing to. And while we don't accept credit card deposits unless you're a professional client, we do accept via debit card. So of course the question is, well, how long does it take? And as it mentions here, for bank transfers in general, it's 1 to 3 business days for both deposits and withdrawals. And usually if it's a local bank or the same bank, it'll be on the lower end of that time frame as opposed to, say, a foreign bank. And with credit cards, it's an instant deposit. Withdrawals takes 2 to 5 business days. Now we have free withdrawal, free deposit, so no charges on that front. Just beware if your beneficiary bank or intermediary bank charges, then in that case, it's not coming from our side. There is a small fee if there's a currency conversion, but if you're doing it in the same currency, well, then that obviously won't be applied. Now, a lot of times, some of you might want to use something called the proof of payment section, where you can add your transaction proof when you fund, and the funds will be credited before they to your IG account before they reach IG. And for those looking for a quicker withdrawal time, you might want to consider verifying your bank details ahead of time. That subtab there, verification. So when it comes to withdrawal, it'll go through much quicker. So with these out of the way, let's go through charges. So if you're trading a spot contract, and of course we're going to go into the account, we've done this before in a platform walkthrough, but you want to look at the top. We're looking at oil now, and you look at the top section over there, and you click on that, and you can see that there's spot, and then there's futures. So I'm looking at, for example, in this case, if you want to look at a spot contract, you go to the information there, all those things are going to be available. And of course, there are overnight funding charges for spot. And to avoid these overnight charges, you can consider trading futures, which are usually for longer term trades. But keep in mind, and what we're going to do now is we're going to click on futures, and then we're going to click on, in our example, just for the sake of our example, the June contract right now. And in the information section, what's going to come up is you're going to see the expiry over there. And by default, you have a rollover. So if you buy in June, it's going to roll over. That contract, that long position is going to roll over into July, and so on and so forth. But the question is, what if you want to remove that? What if you don't want it to do so by default? So click up at the top right, go to My IG, and here we can go to Settings, and then we can click on Rollover, and here you have a choice. And you can say, okay, I want to enable rollover or disable rollovers, depending on whether or not you want it to roll over into the next month. If you don't, if you want the position to close by expiry, then you can click on disable, and then afterwards you can submit. So in our example, by default, it's enabled, and then we're going to disable, and then we're going to go ahead and click on submit. Now, when it comes to, there's something I want to discuss when it comes to commissions. We don't charge any commissions with the exception of share CFDs. So in other words, if you aren't trading share CFDs, there won't be any commission charges. It'll just be the spread or the difference between the bid and the ask. But there are going to be adjustments when it comes to dividends for indices and equities. So if you're long, you'll get a positive adjustment for receiving a dividend, and if you're short, you'll get a negative adjustment. So those of you seeing that adjustment, realize it's not a charge or anything. That's just an adjustment based on dividends. And when it comes to pricing oil, and I'm going to use oil as the main example here, the futures is based on the underlying. So there you see a June contract. Well, it's based on the June futures contract, July for July, so on and so forth. But what about the spot price? And here we have to look at how it's priced, and it's based on a combination of the front futures month, so in example, June, and the back month, July. So here I've sort of put it here on a sheet of paper. You got June and July in our example, and we're moving, as time progresses, we're moving along this curve from the lower June price to the higher July price, and that means that there's going to be what's called a basis adjustment to your position. So yeah, there is the overnight charge on a spot position, but then there's the basis adjustment, and a lot of times people get confused and think that they're getting charged, where in a normal contango market where the back month is slightly more expensive than the front month, that what's happening is we're just moving along this curve. Now, what if it's the other way around? What if, and this happens sometimes, what if the next month, the July, is less, is the price is less than that of June? Well, in this case, as time progresses, prices are going to be lower. We're going to be adjusting the spot contract's price lower. So in this case, you would actually be credited to your account. So it's not a charge. This is an adjustment. It could be in your favor if it's a contango market, if it's a backwardation market, or it could be against you if it's in the case of a contango market. So up next, I want to discuss the price that you're going to be looking at. And in this case, by default, you're looking at the mid price. And it's possible that price will look like it's reached your order when in fact, if you say have a buy order in place and you're closing it with a sell, you should be looking at the bid price. And if you have a sell order and you're closing it with a buy, you should be looking at the ask price. So clicking on those three dotted lines and you go under price, you can see that there's ask, bid, and mid. And so when you're looking at the mid, a lot of times that's the reason why it'll look like, the price has reached your order or stop loss or take profit, but it didn't trigger unless the ask price has crossed the buy order or the bid price has touched your sell order. And lastly, I want to discuss one final item, and that is trading in volatile times. You got to be aware that the order, the stop loss or take profit may not be triggered at exactly that price because of the high volatility. We do have an option, and I brought this up before with the platform walkthrough, to use guaranteed stops where you're only charged a premium if that guaranteed stop gets triggered. So with that in mind, we do hope that you enjoyed this video. From all of us here at IG, thank you so much for watching.